Welcome to the Secret Stash.
Shh, that's super secret.
And this is the only show that tracks down the local people behind the places and things we love.
I'm going to kick it off with my favorite thing ever.
Then goes deep to reveal the best kept secrets behind them all.
Why aren't we talking to people? Let them know. Shout the rooftops. This is great.
And leave you with a stash of stories and offers you'll only find here. Now, here's your host, Jesse Ibanez.
Secret agent man, secret agent man. They've given you a number and taken away your name.
Hey, what's happening, gang? Hey, thanks for tuning in. Maybe caught you on the tail end there of some Ray Lucia dropping some financial knowledge, and ESPN Radio 1700, we got your news hour here, but we ain't talking about sports today. We're talking about some cool local people doing some cool local stuff here around the town, and finding out the secrets and the stories behind them. I'm the secret agent man, Jesse Ibanez, co-founder of the Greenhouse Group, and you in the stash, baby.
Thank you.
Today, we got a really special guest in studio, and this is us wrapping up our fourth show of 4 on how to make 2015 your best year ever with Rod Kempton, personal coach, individual, corporate, and institutional clients, and owner of Powerful Directions. Your values.
My core values. Oh, you want the...
Yeah, I'm doing the slogan right now.
Where we help you name and define your core values.
There you go.
Combine them with your expertise
there
to
it is.
Craft your most powerful business directions.
So happy for you to be in the studio today, Rod. What's up, man? We're off guns blazing right now, brother. And, you know, the truth is that this is a really special gift that Rod is giving us both here today, because Rod has mastery around the craft of a well-formed thought and a well-formed conversation. And I've had the pleasure of actually working with Rod, both personally and professionally, over the last few years. And there are few people that resonate at Rod's frequency. His ability to sit inside of a space and truly listen and take what you already know that's inside of you. And I know, Rod, we're going to talk a lot about that during our time today, because that's one of your very unique abilities as a coach. And create and form a structure of confidence around the space that you already know that you occupy that got you here, right? And then find that as the spark that reignites the flame, which then embellishes the torch, which re-illuminates the path of where you're heading from there. Would you say that was a correct assumption of kind of how your craft works?
It is. My job as a coach is to ask the right questions. And then when I listen to the answers, I listen for those little nuggets of wisdom the person's not even sometimes aware they're saying.
Truth.
But when I help them remember what they just told me, we begin to discover, oh, there's the success habit we need to implement right now. And it's all about success habits.
Ain't that true? And so over the course of our time together today with Rod, he's going to map out a strategy. And granted, it will be a little more 30,000 foot, right? Because we want to try to meet you exactly where you're at. And then offer up some nuggets that you can actually take with you to help nourish you along your path here. So if you can track back over, I mean, we covered some good ground over here in the last month, Rod. We talked about goals for 2015. We got a great structure with that with Joe Stump. And then we talked about money twice, how to make it and how to save it. So now we're getting personal.
Yeah.
Now we're getting individual. And so nobody better to share the space with. So I'm really, really grateful for you to be on the air. I want you to start off by sharing if there was one thing or maybe one key insight that you wanted to make sure that you got across to somebody who's listening to you for the first time right now, what would that be?
The person who is involved with the situation has the solution to the situation. Most often, the only reason they're not implementing it is because either they don't know how to put it together or they aren't confident that their solution will work. And so in the process of having conversation with me, we tease out the details. What am I going to do, steps 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, to make that solution work? And lo and behold, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I've done it before.
Would it be safe to assume that a lot of folks have a tendency to bump into you when they're in a stuck spot?
Yes. Something's happening, something's changing, and they don't know how to change with it, because as human beings, we like to know where everything is. Yeah. And when something starts changing, it's like, this isn't comfortable and I'm not sure what to do. So they run into me when they're going, well, it's kind of, I got to do, I want to do, and then we start helping them to solidify. One of my favorite conversations with a client is where I always meet with people over coffee before we start. That way they get a chance to see how I work and so on and so forth. So she was saying, well, I want to do this and I want to do that. And typical of a very creative person, she was bouncing all over the board because they think randomly, and that's fine. By the time we had finished our process and she had exactly what she was going to do, the last session, she says, well, I met with a person who is going to help me write my business plan. He didn't think my business idea was a good idea, and I told him I didn't care because all he needs to help me do is write the business plan. I know what I'm going to do. I've already done the research. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I have the implementation plan. And I said to her, do you remember our first conversation and your level of confidence now as compared to then? And she goes, you're right. I said, you just told somebody exactly what you want from them and that they get to keep their opinions to themselves because you already know what you're going to do. That's very strong confidence level. That's what I love to see in people. When in the process of them telling me what they do well, what I call success habits, and then we start lining those up as to how they're going to implement them, and all of a sudden they've got a plan. It's like, oh, yeah, I can do this.
You're selling people their confidence back.
I'm helping people regain their confidence. I'm not selling a thing. They have it.
Fair enough. And I actually appreciate the distinction because you're absolutely right. So maybe we can reframe that a little bit, even to another degree, and answer for myself, really, the clarity of, I guess maybe insofar as you can define it, like, what is your craft?
My craft is basically communication,
right, and
looking at a process to take people through so that they can realize what they have inside, in their head, in their heart. That's basically what it's all about.
So let's say, a wayward traveler bumps into you, right? I'm even thinking about myself in a couple different incarnations, and they either get introduced to you from folks who have already helped, you've already helped, or they find you online or whatever the case. And so first meeting, sit down over coffee. What's the one thing that you want to try to get out right out of the gate to see if they're even somebody that you can help?
Do they want to solve the problem?
Interesting. You would think that would be obvious, but no.
Not always. Some people like to have the problem.
Addicted to the struggle?
Perhaps you could say that. I was meeting with one person, and finally I said to him, I can't work with you. And he said, why not? And I said, because I've already indicated the 5 major things you need to do before you can move forward at all. And you had a reason why any one of those things wouldn't work or haven't worked. So you're more invested in the reasons for things not working than in finding a way to make them work. And he goes, that's exactly what the lawyer said.
You're in bad shape when the lawyer is dropping the knowledge like that on you. Interesting. So back to that scenario then. So let's say we're hanging out, we're drinking some coffee. I'm actually somebody who does want some help, and you've defined that. So what process would you take me through then to help me regain my confidence?
The first thing we do is really clarify what's most important to you. And we call those personal values. Now, an entrepreneur's personal values become the business values because the entrepreneur is the business. So when we name and define their 5 core values, we're basically talking about the reason why or the foundation for everything that they do. Then we start going through examples of success. I don't even deal with failures. That's totally a waste of energy. Examples of success.
Unless you can learn from them.
Yes, and so the success is the learning.
Right.
Okay, so I'm still going back to the success.
Sure.
So they had a challenge and they overcame it. What did they do to overcome the challenge? Because that pulls out their behaviors of success. I call them success habits when I'm working with them.
Right.
Because we start looking for themes. After we've looked at several scenarios, We look at themes that basically represent how they are successful over and over and over again. That becomes the foundation then for their language regarding marketing. It becomes the foundation for creating the plan. It becomes the foundation for the business plan. It becomes the foundation for their conversations with people. It starts to craft how we describe their services and or products. That language is what engages other people. What they want to do with anybody with whom they're speaking is have a story that they're sharing, and the person goes, "Oh, that's me. You just described me. I need to work with you." And as they look at their business in that manner, then they'll start looking for the people where they are and what they need to be able to tell the stories and then find them.
5 core values. And I'm almost what's coming up for me. It's almost kind of welling up through the top like truth is. I wonder how homogenous all those values are for people. Do you notice a lot of congruency from client to client around those core values?
There are probably 2 or 3 that nearly always show up. And one would be integrity. Now, I define, and the thing about
we hope.
Yes. But the thing about these is that people define them differently. So I'll use integrity. My definition of integrity for me and how it works for me is authenticity and consistency. I want to be authentically Rod and be able to behave the same way so that people know what to expect. Well, I went to work for an organization one time, and one of their core values was integrity, and they defined it as doing the right thing. But what showed up was doing what works today, which meant that a month from now, if something else comes up, then they'll do something differently. That's not consistent, and so therefore I had challenges with their organization and their definition of integrity.
Whether or not they could even be coachable, right, in that context. You know, and what comes up for me, Rod, is you know, the concept of values practiced is always inseparable from value received.
I would agree.
You know, and so I think that's a perfect opportunity to throw a little door stopper in the conversation right now, because coming up, we're going to get a little deeper now. The pump you might say is prime. We're going to figure out who is Rod, how in the world he got here to be able to hold this level of mastery. And we're going to find out a couple things about Rod you might not have known.
Are you sure you
So
want
stick
to
around.
know?
We'll be right back.
Be sure to follow the show on Facebook at Jesse's Secret Stash and on Twitter at Follow the Stash. You are listening to The Secret Stash with host Jesse Ibanez on ESPN Radio 1700.
What's happening, gang? You are riding in the stash for your noon hour. I got my man Rod Kempton in the studio. He's holding down the fort with powerfuldirections.com. And if you want to get out of that stuck spot that I know I've been in several times, Rod's helped me through, go check out a site, kind of get a better feeling as to exactly what space he intends to occupy for the folks that he helps. Again, that's powerfuldirections.com. Rod Kempton, thank you for hanging out, man. I appreciate you.
It's a pleasure.
I know you're a busy dude, so your gift of giving right now is going to be received wonderfully, I know. Speaking of received, by the way, at the break, I realized that I didn't give my man Justin a shout out from Local Juice Company. Have you tasted this cold proof stuff? This is insane, man. So the backdrop on this, you guys, Local Juice is now fueling these segments for us. And he's got this product he calls Cold Proof. If you know anything about the Bulletproof guys from up around Silicon Valley, it's kind of a play on that. It's a coffee kind of tasting thing, but that's only where the similarities sort of end, because dude throws in French roast from Bird Rock Coffee, was one of my favorite spots down in PB, by the way, ghee, MCT oil, almond milk, toffee, stevia. You got to check this out, man. So Justin, thank you, my man. I appreciate that. You're definitely keeping the embers hot on this very muggy little, it was like muggy and cold on the way in. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Well, come on now. This is
we do
like,
have to have some winter.
no.
I've
not allowed.
I have become a typical spoiled San Diego.
Yeah, I know it, man.
My family teases me like crazy. I say if it's hotter than 74, it's too hot. Well, maybe 78. And if it's colder than 60, it's too cold. And when I go to Tucson, they're teasing me all the time.
It's funny that you said that. It was almost a shameless segue because I know you wanted to live in San Diego probably about, 20 years prior to when you actually made it here, right?
I tried to get here for 20 years and finally made it 6 years ago. And I'm so glad I did.
So tell that story real quick. How did you get to San Diego? Tell me the one thing that got you here.
I started working with an organization where I was working from my home.
Okay.
And we were creating an educational program.
Aha.
And when we were working with all of the instructors, they were all over the country and all over the world. They were in Costa Rica. They were in Washington, D.C. They were Washington State. It didn't matter where they lived, but we were implementing the educational program in San Diego. So I thought, finally, I get to move to San Diego. And I've always loved it here because of the energy, the diversity. And it's, let's not pull any punches. We got a wonderful climate here, except for those 3 or 4 weeks during the winter and 3 or 4 weeks during the summer when you really need to have something more than just an open window to make your house perfect temperature.
Luckily, this is only a regional show, because if it wasn't, I think we'd get bomb threats here. How spoiled rotten we are, and gloating about it live on the air.
Well, I live right next door to Balboa Park. Yeah. It's the best front yard in the world, and somebody else takes care of it.
No, you're not even lying. I love that spot. So you mentioned something, and you had said that you kind of came from the corporate world, right?
I did indeed.
So what uprooted you? What was the fulcrum that got you out of that?
Well, the interesting thing about my history is that I've gone through 4 or 5 very different industries. I started in non-traditional educational programming.
Okay.
And that was within the Cooperative Extension Service, and I was a 4-H agent in the county setting.
Okay.
And then I went into high-tech manufacturing, was working with an organization where we built critical parts to go on planes. Mm-hmm. From there, I went into healthcare, worked in a hospital that was affiliated with the University of Arizona. So it was a very highly technical arena, and the product was a healthy person, not a piece of machinery to go into an aircraft.
Interesting. So
I had these processes that took me out of one industry and into another because, well, high-tech manufacturing was supposed to make me rich. Didn't work there. Healthcare, I really had a great experience. And then I needed to move somewhere else. And so I started doing consulting. And that was great, but at that point wasn't putting enough food on the table, so on and so forth. So I've really had an opportunity to go through various different kinds of educational programs,
which I'm sure helps you in your craft.
Oh yeah, I've also worked in academia, on the university level. Mm-hmm. So that being the case, there aren't many situations that I haven't experienced. And one of the things that we all do is, well, you don't understand my world, because we're pretty specific about our experience.
Sure.
So after telling me about their world, I say, okay, so let's see, you're doing this, and this is the response, and these are the people that are challenging, and these are people that are supportive. There's a common frame of experience throughout every kind of experience. Mm-hmm. And then we go right back into, so what are the success habits that need to be employed?
Yeah, and I'd love to hear, you were talking about the 5 success principles and values you coach through with your clients. Well, what's Rod's 5 then? You can't give away something that you don't already own, right? Yeah. So I hope that you have clarity around your 5. Can I put you on the spot?
Oh, yeah. And we understand that we have 5 core values so that they're an uneven number. We can't have a tie vote.
Okay.
Any decision we're going to make, we need to compare against our 5 core values. And it needs to have at least an alignment with 4 of those 5. If you gave them each a percentage, you'd want at least an 80% likelihood of success.
I like that thought.
So my 5 core values are integrity, which I've mentioned before. And then we have wisdom, which is a combination of knowledge and experience.
Okay.
Being a very social person, one of my core values is friendship. And that's a social connection with other people. It includes intimate and loving relationships.
Mm-hmm, sure.
And then for me, spirituality is connecting to that unseen wisdom that's around us. Some people may think that means theology or organizational membership. I really am looking at just my connection to how it is that I get inspiration or testing the premise.
The mirth of the unknown, right? I mean,
right.
How can you truly exist inside of a leadership capacity if you also don't know that there's things that you don't know?
Exactly.
Like the man who knows something knows that he knows nothing at all, right?
Yeah, the blind spots. So the fifth one is adventure. Now, I didn't used to think I was an adventuresome person until I looked back and realized that I've really taken some pretty adventuresome trips in my life just because of my life path. And there's a phrase that always works for me, and that phrase is take the journey. So there are times when I'm looking at a decision and I have no idea really what to do next, but I know that I've got to take a step out. And that there's faith that when I take that step out, it's going to land on solid ground and I will learn more information and then I can take the journey. So that's the way I define adventure. And literally those 5 core values are the way I make decisions. When I'm facing something, I'm going, okay, so Rod, what background information do you have that combined with your experience, how's that going to play out? And is this something that really has to be on faith? Take the journey. Am I authentically me? Do I get to behave consistently so people know what to expect? I love it when people say, well, of course, that's what you always do. That means I'm being authentic and consistent. And if I get to make a connection with somebody, I'm in there. So those are the way that things play out. And literally there are times when I just have to sit down. Some people might call it meditation. Some people might call it prayer. And I need to just release, let go, and allow something to come in. And that's when I'm in tune with spirituality, in my definition.
Yeah. I love that thought, too. You know, I don't remember how I caught it, but I remember somewhere along the path, my journey, Michael Jackson said that when he writes a song, you got to let God in the room.
Yeah.
You know, and so I love that concept of creating enough space for people when you're consulting with them, helping them get through that stuck spot, that you're allowing room for the unknown, for the unconscious to have a little playpen within to work as well. No?
And when I see people kind of, there's something in their eyes. I watch their behaviors because that's how I get my clues. There's something in their eyes. And when I see their eyes go a little bit out of focus from what's in the room into something inside, I go, okay, what's your gut telling you?
Yeah.
What's going on right now? I can see the wheels turning. And that's when they're going to listen to that bit of spirituality. And I don't care what we call that. I don't care if we call it God. I don't care what we call it as long as people pay attention to it.
And being attuned to it.
Yes.
Which I think is probably one of your greatest gifts. And I know I've experienced, again, that personally with you, is that when you're in a physical space like I am right now with Rod, the everythingness and the distal expansion tends to actually come back towards the center.
Yeah.
You know, there's a calming vibration about somebody who's a high-level thinker. When you're inside of a room with someone like that, the frequency tends to slow down a little bit, which allows for clarity, which is, of course, the greatest gift one human being can give another in this life is the gift of clarity, because with clarity, you can create vision.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a perfect opportunity to say coming up. Right after the other side of the break, you're going to get downloaded with a bunch of good sports updates and whatnot and hear some important messages from important people. But when you come back on the other side of this, the 2 biggest benefits of coaching and the 4 corporate cultures, which you got to be mindful of to know where you exist if you want to have your best year ever in 2015. We're hanging out with Rod Kempton, Powerful Directions. We'll be right back.
So give it to me. 'Cause I already know what you want.
If you missed any of the show, check out the podcast at secretstashradio.com.
When I met you in the summer.
Welcome back to the Secret Stash with host Jesse Ibanez on ESPN Radio 1700.
Hey, what's happening, gang? We're hanging out in the Secret Stash, which is our favorite people hand-plucked from the little communities around San Diego that we live in and serve, and finding out the stories and the purpose behind them. And we're in the studio today flanked by a very high-level thinker, someone who I'm very blessed to share this space with, Rod Kempton, owner of PowerfulDirections.com, personal coach, Dude does it all, anywhere from the guy all by himself to big, huge corporate groups. And we're bookmarking the end of this conversation around how to make 2015 your best year ever. And Rod, what's coming up for me is the thought, okay, so you can maybe track back. So we spent the first segment talking about defining their 5 core values, right?
Right.
You can't give away something you don't already own. So then we spent the last chunk of time talking about what space you come from and your 5 core values. And I appreciate you sharing that with us. Mm-hmm. So now I want to kind of expand it back out and look forward a little bit. So check my thinking on this. See if I'm leaving any groups out. It seems to be that there's 4 prevailing groups in business. You've got the solopreneur, right? The guy or gal is all by himself, right? And you might call him the lone wolf. You might say, hey, that's the easiest because there's no other people around. But the truth is sometimes that's the hardest because you're dealing with all the cacophony of voices inside your own brain. We'll get to that in a sec. And then you've got the next level up, which is kind of more the ma and pa. Sometimes even a family-run business, right, where it's a small group. And those can be really unhealthy sometimes because people continue to kind of tell their own story and they get away with their own crap, right? And so there's maybe sometimes a tyrannical dude kind of running the game and he's scared to grow because he knows that more people is going to mean he's going to get exposed. Right?
Yeah.
Then you go to small team, and that's when you kind of start the concept of a group, right? And so then the concern becomes, do you lead from the top or do you lead from the middle? Mm-hmm. And then lastly, you got into bigger groups like the corporate model, and then you got how does accounting talk to R&D, which talks to the, human resources, right?
Right.
I came across this study by University of Georgia. They said the 2 main benefits of coaching are a return on whatever investment you're going for, right? There's a project we got to get to. We got to make this thing work. We're not working well together as a team. Our numbers are down. You return on your investment for hiring a coach. And then the second thing is the self-awareness that happens when you hire a coach. So there's the external and then there's the intrinsic.
Yes.
Does that resonate with you?
It does.
So let's plug this back in then. So let's say you're talking to a solopreneur right now, what's the one thing that you'd like to share with them that you've learned along your travels that's going to help them have the best year ever?
Solopreneurs are typically technical experts. They have a product or a process that they absolutely love and they're good at it. And that's why they've decided to do this for their business.
Well said.
That doesn't mean that they're everything else that a business needs. Sometimes they don't even realize they're not paying attention to the business of running business. So things like financial tracking, things like understanding their own expense, profit margins, those types of things. A lot of times they really need to stop and think about those things. And I can help them understand all the little categories of running a business that they then need to start bringing resources in. They're typically great and motivated about that thing, which is their technical expertise.
Yeah. You, by making the invisible visible, might be the greatest gift you give a solopreneur. You also said something else I think is brilliant. I know Michael Gerber wrote a book. I call it the Small Business Bible. It's called The E-Myth.
Yes.
And he's since revisited that several times over. He says that inside of everyone, there's the technician,
yes,
there's the manager, and then there's the entrepreneur.
Yes.
And how often are solopreneurs technicians can't manage anything and can't see the vision, or the forest through the trees or whatever.
And many times the reason they left organizations is because their management skills are either struggling or they don't like the way other people were managed. Most often people leave businesses or leave jobs because of the supervisor, not because of what it is that they're doing.
Lone wolf.
Right.
Okay, so let's move on then. So what about the ma and pa? So this is the small group, right? So a lot of unhealthy, sometimes tyrannical bosses. It's really about control, right? So let's say someone's finding themselves, or maybe they are at the head of that and they've noticed that within themselves. What's the one little gift you can give to a ma and pa structure?
When I can help them understand the behaviors that they implement and the communication process that they implement without judgment, but identify the behaviors I've observed and the responses to that. In other words, the question becomes, when you did this, did you get the outcome you wanted? No. Well, then perhaps this isn't your best option.
It's an interesting point. I remember I stumbled across this truism a while ago. It said, communication is the response that you receive.
Okay, yes.
You know, people always think, I'm communicating. Well, how is it being received?
Right.
That's your real answer on how well you're communicating.
Absolutely, because if the person doesn't receive it like we want, we haven't communicated it in such a way that they can receive it like we want.
Brilliant.
Let me tell you a quick story about
please.
this as an example. Was working with somebody who had a shop, and in that shop they did various kinds of printing and graphics arts and so on and so forth. And they were storefront. So we were talking, and he was very upset that one of his new employees was not running one of the machines correctly. And I said, well, how did you train him? And he said, I expect them to come in knowing how to run those machines. They say they can run it. Then at that point, they should be able to. I said, and you have a 16-year-old and a 17-year-old, right? And he goes, yes. And I said, once your 16-year-old got her driving license, did you immediately let her take the car out by herself? Well, no, she wasn't really that practiced on it. I said, so how long before your 17-year-old was able to take the car out by herself? About 8 months. Great. Then your 16-year-old needs some training, yes? Yes. Well, how about the person you hire into your organization to start working on a machine that's like other machines, but they don't know it on their own? They still need some training with that machine. And he goes, I'd never thought of it like that. And I said, so think of them as a learning 16-year-old new driver.
Yeah. It's almost the same kind of challenge that you would imagine from a small team.
Yes.
That story, because in my experience, you know, the small team, it still usually has a central focal point, even if it's just the emotional, energetic leader. And the big juxtapose is either does that person lead from atop or does he or she lead from the middle?
Right.
You know, so maybe if that's where someone's finding you right now and they're in one of those situations, what's the one thing you can do to help them along to have the best year ever?
My experience is that people who want to lead from the top are used to giving, and I'll use the word order, giving orders. Okay, do this, do this, do this.
Right.
And when I work with them, I have basically said, have you tried asking the question and letting people volunteer? Well, why do I want to do that? Because when the volunteer will be most committed to doing what they said they can do. So,
and they feel like they have buy-in, right? They're a partner in the outcome.
That's right. So asking the question rather than giving the direction starts the being a part of the group and allowing them to volunteer.
Yeah.
If we can think of John Picard in Star Trek Next Generation, I think that was.
Wow, you're dropping some knowledge right now. Go ahead.
So he would always ask for input from the rest of the people at the table.
Yeah.
And then when he found something that seemed most doable, he would say, make it so.
Yeah.
They were the one to make it so, not him. But he would ask for all that because all the people they hire are technical experts in their own realm.
I would almost contend that when you get to big corporate groups, everything that you just said is basically at play. It's just that it's all applicable because you have all of those. So if you'll allow me, I just want to skip on that. I want to track back on something that was stuck in my head. You said earlier, you mentioned the word success habits.
Yes.
I think you said it a couple different times.
I have.
So what do you mean by success habits?
There are things that we do without thinking about it. That's what a habit is, that make us successful. One of the success habits that I have talked about is asking the right question. So when I'm working with anybody, if I can think of the right question to ask to pull their information forward, that's a success habit. Let me give you another story about that.
Yeah.
And that is a person that I worked with had been a very successful real estate investor. And by that, I mean he would put together the project and the investors. He had been doing very well for many, many years. And something happened around 2008, 2009, where a lot of us stumbled, and he stopped being successful. He stopped doing what he had been doing. And when we talked, he goes, Rod, I don't know what's going on. I just can't make this work anymore. So what we did was go through, yes, what are your core values? Why and how do you do things? And then we went through all of those successes that he had had in terms of those major projects. And we identified what he did and when. So success habit and the order therein. So after we had done that and become very clear on those themes and what the sex habits were, I said, so the next project, where are you in that order? Oh, that's all I need to do? Apparently that's what you used to do. Yeah, I think I don't need you anymore. So
Yeah.
he was fine. And I talked with him later. He goes, I got 2 projects going that are just perfect. So he just needed to remember.
What's funny about you is the victory is you getting fired.
It is. I love it when people say, I don't need you anymore. Thank you very much. I'm glad that we were successful.
Can you kind of feel what vibe this guy's kicking? I mean, so, if you can track back, right? So it's really about core values. And Rod loves the concept of 5 because then you don't have the even vote. And then you got to know not only for yourself, but it's also the same person that's communicating with the business. So having and seeing the similarities and the patterns between the two, and then identifying the success habits. What exactly got you there? Because sometimes there's little shifts that happen. Sure, you got to evolve. You got to be willing to accept change. But a lot of times it's the core fundamental things. You just got to get back on track to get it as to where it is you want to be. And coming up, Rod, I love you.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry, brother, because on the other side of this break, I'm going to make a fool out of you. Because we got our favorite thing to do on Tuesdays. We're going to play a little game, and something tells me you're not going to want to miss this. You're in the stash, baby. See you right now.
Be sure to follow the show on Facebook at Jesse's Secret Stash and on Twitter at Follow the Stash. Welcome back to the Secret Stash with host Jesse Ibanez on ESPN Radio 1700.
You in the stash, baby. We got you new now, ESPN Radio 1700. And if you're just joining us right now, we got Rod Kempton in the house, coach for small businesses, big businesses, everything in between, owner of PowerfulDirections.com. And he just dropped some serious knowledge on us over the last 3 segments. But unfortunately for Rod, it's about to get silly up here with a little thing we like to do, games out, memes out. Run it, Jeff.
And now it's time for your favorite thing to do on Tuesdays.
Hell yes!
It's Games Out, Memes Out,
Let the games begin!
where we put our favorite guests to the test.
And by winning, I win here and I win there, winning.
But watch out, because you just might end up on the Meme Hall of Fame.
Don't you ever talk about
I think Rod's going to end up in the meme hall of fame.
Now, here's your host,
Hey, I'm game.
Jesse
I'm game.
Ibanez.
Yes. And for this round, we're going to do accents and impressions, Rod, in a little game we like to call Heads Up. So, my man, without further ado, let's get into this.
All right.
And here we go.
Oi. Oh, there's a big tower where I live.
Uh-huh.
And I can't speak the way those people speak because there's a very smooth part of their accent.
Uh-huh. Italian?
Neighbor.
French?
Yes.
Okay.
French. There you go. That's it.
French? Oh, my God. Okay, good.
Okay.
That was an amazingly long...
One of the boroughs of New York.
Okay, Brooklyn?
Okay.
Bronx?
That's it.
Okay.
You got it.
Nice. Whew.
Great actor.
Yeah?
And the first part of this last name is what you do when you're going through.
Christopher Walken.
Yes, you did.
Okay,
well.
yeah, I don't know. It's a cheat, though.
This is a person who lives in the largest state except Alaska.
Texas?
The person who lives there.
George Wayne. John Wayne.
Just a general term for the person who lives there.
A Texan.
Very good.
Jeez.
This is where Count Dracula.
Dude, that was not bad, though. That was not bad. That wasn't that bad. It was amazing how long and drawn out it was.
Yeah. Well, that's just the way. Games for me are not competition, they're social experiences.
Oh, well, interesting way that you could say that, because we're going to now pass the baton to you, my friend. And now it's my opportunity to give the clues for you. Okay,
fine.
So here we go. Let's rock and roll. Hoochie coo. And we're doing accents. We're going to keep this fair,
All
okay?
right.
Because the loser has to pound a warm Pabst-Blue Ribbon. Oh my God, this is like somebody.
Valley Girl.
Yeah, goo. Okay. Like Father of Rock and Roll.
Oh, Elvis Presley.
Okay, go. Yeah. This is like I'm gonna catch a major thing on the ocean, dude.
Oh, surfer.
Yeah. Oh, this is the little crouchy dude on Lord of the Rings.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about. Pass.
Precious?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can't think of his name.
Pass this one. Oh, this is the cartoon, and they drove around in the Mystery Mobile.
Is that the Scooby-Doo?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, this is South Park. The guy who's got the worst attitude on South Park.
I don't remember his name.
Okay. Cartman.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the guy I said from Texas.
John Wayne.
Yeah. Okay, go. We're doing good. Oh, this is dude. I'm not gonna be able to pass this one. Oh, gee. Okay, no. Okay. That wasn't that bad. How many did we get? Not bad, Rod Kempton. Not bad, buddy. Nice work, Brad. Nice work. Yeah. So
in
good.
other words, I receive cues from you better than I give cues.
Imagine that. Something tells me you're in the right business, my friend. And speaking of that guy being in the right business, I want to thank you for the opportunity of hanging out with us.
My pleasure.
You dropped some serious knowledge to bookend how we're going to make 2015 the best year ever. We've got the 5 core values, which
Yes.
also happen to translate into your core business values.
Yes.
You debunked basically how to get a little bit further along despite whatever corporate group that you're in, right?
Right.
Solopreneur, mom, pa, small group, large corporation.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also defined why the importance of success habits. Now, what I would love to do is to get really clear about how somebody can actually get this experience for themselves. So would they go to your site, powerfuldirections.com?
Yes,
And then what would they do from there?
It's basically an online resume and examples. It's not that highly interactive because people choose a coach based upon personal conversation. So my contact information, either by email or telephone number, is on there. We set up an appointment for coffee, we chat, and then they get to decide if it's going to work or not.
Rod Kempton, Powerful Directions, your coach, consultant,
An educator.
And he basically takes your values, your expertise, and clarifies your directions. Thank you for hanging out on the show today.
My pleasure.
man.
Thank you
I
very
appreciate
much.
you very much.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you for tuning in. Hopefully you got something today. If you go to the stash, Rod left something very important in there for someone who might reach out and contact him for the first time. What is that, Rod?
Half price on your first session.
Half price on your first session, ladies and gentlemen. That's some truth.
Yeah. And we can talk all about that when we meet over coffee.
I love it, brother. Thank you for that. You'll go to catch that at secretstashradio.com. And we'll be here next week. And we're going to pick up a whole new format next week. We got out of the 2015 New Year's resolutions to have your best year ever, so you can go catch the archives of the previous 3 shows. And we'll be right back here, same bat time, bat channel, with some cool local peeps doing some cool local things. Real Talk Radio coming up.
Thanks for listening to The Secret Stash. If you missed any of the show, check out the podcast at secretstashradio.com. And we'll be back next Tuesday at noon right here on ESPN Radio 1700.